الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continue inshallah ta'ala with Kitab Al-Muamalat, the chapter of Al-Bay' and the Muamalat, buying and selling, and the rest of the transactions from the book of Akhsar Al-Mokhtasarat by Al-Allama Ibn Balban rahimahullah. And as mentioned last time, the way that we're going through this book is that we're going word by word to understand the masail, to understand the matters of fiqh, to perceive it the right way, to understand what it means, and to get whatever the ruling is mentioned there. And the exam, inshallah ta'ala, will be basically on the English meaning of it. The exam will be in English, but it's a level that we need to take ourselves to, and that is we're going through the Arabic language of it too, so that we can learn the language of the ulama, and it's a step to learn the Arabic language, inshallah ta'ala. It might not be the easiest way, especially even with the chapter of the transactions. If we would have done that in the salah, things like this, maybe this would be much easier. But it's one of the ways of teaching, even to start with something difficult so that it becomes easier afterwards, inshallah. So don't stress yourself with the words, but enjoy it. Actually, this is an enjoyable thing. And do the best you can. One thing that is we want to make it as if it's required is to make sure that we read it right. We read the matn correctly, inshallah ta'ala, in Arabic, assuming that most everybody know how to read Arabic. So if you want to make sure that you make it easy for yourself to read it, and if you don't, that's fine, inshallah, as long as we're getting the meanings correct, inshallah. We talked about the definition of al-bay' and the 7 conditions for buying and selling, the pillars of it and the conditions of it, very briefly. So that is from last time. Then we continue. So, okay, do we need to review it? Inshallah, will be okay. Right. Then we stopped at when he said, وَإِنْ بَاعَ مَشَاعًا. You see it? So you have to follow, inshallah ta'ala, with the book. If you don't follow with the book, it's going to be very difficult to benefit much. So if you have the book, inshallah, follow it, inshallah, and try to benefit, inshallah ta'ala. So, وَإِنْ بَاعَ مَشَاعًا. You guys are there? طيب. He says, وَإِنْ بَاعَ مَشَاعًا بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ غَيْرِهِ أو عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن أو عبدا وحرا أو خلا وخمرا صفقة واحدة صح في نصيبه وعبده والخل بقسطه ولمشتر الخيار. So here, this is the statement. He says, وَإِن, that means an if. باع, if he sells. مشاعا. The word مشاعا is an important word to remember. Al-masha' is what's originally mean the white, something that is widespread. Something that is widespread. Something that is known to the people. Even the word rumor, they use the word isha'a. Something that people spread among the masses as a rumor. But here in the fiqh, meaning of al-masha' is when something that is owned by one person, more than one person. So more than one person is owning a property or owning something where it's not really definitely known who owns what. So it's never been divided. So the clear example, 2 people or 3 people, they own a piece of land. Okay, so all of them, they own that entire piece of land. They did not divide it among themselves. Who owns this part of the land versus who owns the other part of the land? It's masha'a. So masha'a meaning that it's by all of them. There's no specific spot of the land that owned by one specifically. So this is the case of when a person sells something masha'a. So there's different categories or different types of it. Something that is being sold that has more than one ownership in it, basically. So وإن باع مشاعا بينه وبين غيره, between him, بينه وبين غيره, and between others. So this is basically, he gave us the definition of al-masha', something that is being sold masha'an, between him and the others. If it's already been divided, then it's not masha' anymore. So there's 2 acres of land. Someone owns 1 acre and a half, and the other owns half an acre, but it's divided already. Because, and I hope inshallah I'll make it clear, the masha' meaning that it's not known which part of the land is owned by who. So they might be, their ownership is 2 to 1. One owns 1.5 and one owns half. But it's not known whose 1.5 is who and whose half is who. So it's all ala al-masha'. It's for all of them. But if they have the same combination, but it's known, the half of the acre is the south, east, whatever, with very specific drawings and things like this. This is owned by this guy, and the rest is owned by the other guy. Then we're not talking about this here. You get it? So we're talking about the first case, where more than one person owns something, even if it's divided into proportions or ratios or whatever, but it's not known which is which. وإن باع مشاعا بينه وبين غيره. So if someone sells something that is between him and others, owned between him and his others and others, أو عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن, or someone sold his slave and the slave of others without his permission, without the permission of the other owner's slave. If you remember, we mentioned before why the ulama in fiqh, they always talk about buying and selling. They bring the subject of the slaves, even though there's no slavery now. But why this is important even today to talk about it like this? Does anybody remember? We said something about it before. As the ulama, they say, not because it might happen. No, not this one. Ahsan. Because everybody knows what a human is. But if they say, oh, his car and the car of someone else without his permission, maybe after 100 years of now, there's no cars. People do not know what cars is. But if you see the word abd, all human beings, they understand that this is a human being. So this is from the wisdom of the ulama, that they would choose the examples in the books of fiqh, something that till the end of times people understand. Even if it does not exist. But it's a human being. You understand what a human being is anyway. So if they mention something else, maybe it will not be clear after generations to come. You understand the point? So here, or the second case here, he sold 2 slaves, right? Someone sold 2 slaves to one person. One is his and one is someone else, without the permission of that other person. This is a mas'ala. What's the deal with this? أو عبدا وحرا, or a slave and a free man. Someone sold a slave and a free man. Can a free man be sold? No, it's not permissible. So this is the case of selling something permissible and something that is not permissible, right? At the same time, in the same contract. أو خلا وخمرا, or خلا وخمرا. خل is vinegar, and khamr is wine, haram, intoxication. And it's also صفقة واحدة. صفقة واحدة. الصفقة is one deal, one transaction. واحدة meaning one. And الصفقة is the deal, comes from التصفيق. You know التصفيق, when you clap your hands. So this is originally comes from that, where they use it to make the end of the deal. Okay, so this is what the meaning of safqa. But safqa now, it's not used as this, does not bring the meaning of doing this. It just basically one transaction, one deal. So it's basically, what is the deal here? That it's more than one deal in one contract. So this is خلا أو خمرا, صفقة واحدة. So now we have the cases. At the first one, بينه وبين غيره, right? Something مشاع between him and someone else. أو عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن. Something that it's permissible for him to sell with something that is not permissible for him to sell because he did not take the permission because he doesn't own it. أو عبدا وحرا. Something that is, permissible, and something that is not permissible. And the same thing with al-khall wal-khamr. Something permissible, something that is not permissible. Or the previous one, not just something that is haram, something does not exist. You cannot sell a free man. It does not, it's not even valid for it to start with. So what happens if someone does this? You understand the mas'ala now? طيب. صح في نصيبه. The buying, the selling will be valid. صح, صحيح, is correct. في نصيبه, in his share. نصيب is a share. So نصيبه, in his share. In the first case, بينه وبين غيره. So when we go here, صح في نصيبه, do you see the word نصيبه? Then go to the first sentence that we said, وإن باع مشاعا بينه وبين غيره, between him and someone else. So this is the first part, صح في نصيبه. So the first case, between him and someone else, a piece of land that belongs to him and someone else. And he sold it to a third person. Then what's valid is in his share only. In his share only will be valid, but not for the share of the one that owns it with him. So and then there's a condition also, another condition will be mentioned later. So in this case, that if he owns 2/3 of the property, then it's valid in 2/3 of the property, not in 1/3 of it, right? Even though he sold the entire property, but it will be only valid to 2/3 because that's what he owns. That's the first part. It's not finished yet. So first of all, it's correct in his nasib, in his portion. وعبده, go to the second case, أو عبده وعبد غيره. In the case of his slave and the slave of someone else without his permission, it will be valid in his abd, in the slave that he owns. So if he sold a slave that he owns and a slave that he does not own to someone else, and that person gave him 100,000, right? So that means it's only valid for the slave that he owns. And then they have to, and which is something else will be continued, بقسطه. That means it's only valid. Look at first, it's only valid when it comes to selling his own abd, his own property. وعبده والخلي. And it's also the same thing, عبد وحر. If he sold a slave and a free man, it's only valid in the slave. If it's خل أو خمر, vinegar and wine, the same way. خمر is haram. It's haram to sell. So what is permissible? The part which is khal. The khal or the vinegar that he sold is valid. So not the entire transaction is void. It's only what's permissible for him to sell. Is that it? No. He says بقسطه. بقسطه. Al-qist is like the nasib, share. Al-qist is also refers to the share of a person, or a portion of what a person has, right? And that's why they use nowadays in transaction, the word al-qist is the payment that you pay every month. When you purchase something in payments, they call it al-bay'u in the modern Arabic even, which has its roots here. In transactions, you would find it even in the books of fiqh or in the fatawa or the like of this. Al-bay'u bit-taqsit. Selling with payments. Bit-taqsit. Qist and qist and qist. Portion, like this. So again, going back to what's the masala here. So it's valid only in his part. بقسطه. By the portion, the word is very precise. By the portion, by his portion, بقسطه. By the portion that he owns. Why the word قسطه is important here? Because he sells it with a certain price, with a number, that this price reflects the portion of what he owns. So if he sold the land, right, for 100,000, and his portion of the land is half, he only owns half, right? So that means he is entitled to what? To the half of the price that he sold it with, right? This can be the northern part of the land is more valuable than the southern part, whatever. So that's why they can appraise the land, right? And see his, if there is a portion that he owns, or if it's masha', that means nobody owns anything, but half of the land is his, then it has to be divided according to the proper portion. So he doesn't take the less one or the more expensive one. So that's why بقسطه is not just I own half, so you give half. No, it's more complicated than this. So there's some form of appraisal to see what he actually owns and what's the portion that belongs to him. So that's why, for example, if khalla and khamr, vinegar and wine, he sold both. The vinegar is 90% of whatever he sold, and 5% was the alcohol. But the alcohol is far more expensive than the vinegar, right? And he sold both for 100, right? But the portion, which is 5% for the wine, is worth 95, even though it's 5% only. And the vinegar is worth $5. So what should he be entitled to? The part that is halal, which is the vinegar, that means the $5. Not that this is 5 kilograms and this is 5 kilograms, or 5 liters and 5 liters, so we have, no. That's why بقسطه is important. بقسطه refers to the portion and the value of it, with all of the other details and variables involved in, right? So calculations has to be done. بقسطه. So the first one, صح في نصيبه, it's valid in his nasib, valid in his part of what he's selling, and it has to be بقسطه, with the proportion of the value that he is entitled to. But there's one other condition, ولمشتر الخيار. ولمشتر, lam here, to the مشتري. المشتري is what? The purchaser. The purchaser, right? The buyer. No, the one that purchased. Right? So the one that purchased, he has al-khiyar. What's al-khiyar? Not cucumber. Right? Because al-khiyar is cucumber also. Al-khiyar is what? Al-khiyar from choice. Khiyar al-bay', which is a huge subject in buying and selling. So he has the choice of what? I don't want to continue with that deal. So the purchaser, even though they can figure out the portion exactly and what he sold is halal and all of these things, but the one that came and purchased, he did not purchase it like this. He wanted the whole thing. So now you're telling me I only take this portion and not the other because it does not belong to you. I don't want the whole deal. You get it? And the same thing for the seller, but this is here mentioned here also the purchaser. وَلِمُشْتَرٍ الْخِيَارِ. So 3 conditions here are mentioned that has to be fulfilled if something is sold على المشاع, upon المشاع, or something that is owned by more than one. So that it's valid in his part and with the proportion of it, and they have the choice, the purchaser has the choice to cancel the whole deal. That means the seller, he should not say, well, I sold it to you, sorry. You're going to have just to take the portion that I own. No, he has the choice to cancel the whole deal. Clear? So this is the mashā'. And they also call it in the books of fiqh, التفريق في الصفقة. التفريق, to separate one deal. One deal, but it has more than one part to it. What's the ruling of it? So someone sells something that he doesn't own versus with something that he owns. So the contract is valid, but only in what he owns. Someone, he sells something that is permissible with something else that is not permissible in one deal, one contract. That means it's permissible only in what's permissible, and it's not permissible in what's not permissible. And there's something else even, if someone sells something known and something that is not known, right? So this contract is not valid because there's something majhul, something that is not known. It's not mentioned here. Like he sells a car and this truckload of things that is closed. He doesn't know what's inside. I sell you this car and whatever is in this truck that is closed. For how much? Say the car, for example, is for 100. Right? But he would sell him both these things, and the other thing, he doesn't know what he's selling, what he's purchasing. He would sell both for 150. So can we say that it's only valid for the portion that he knows? In this case, the ulama, they said no, because the majhul is nobody knows what. Right? So, but then other ways they can exclude the majhul. But anyway, we do not take it here. So let's stick to what's mentioned here, inshallah ta'ala. Also, another important thing, since we're not dealing with the contemporary issues, and no questions are to be asked for what's happening in this life that we live in. That's later, after the dars, inshallah. This is not of our concern at this moment, just to understand what every word and what the mas'ala means. Even if you take yourself back to the times when there's slavery, it's okay, just as long as you understand the principles of it and how it's explained. You know that if you include more than one transaction in one contract, it will come later. It's not permissible. And this is where contemporary issue, where lease that end with ownership. Like, this is not permissible because it's two deals in one. What's the difference between that and this that we're talking about here? If you have owners, if you have selling something and renting something, these are two different contracts. In one contract, that's not permissible. You have to have a contract for buying and selling and a separate contract for renting or leasing. You cannot have both in the same contract. But here, this is different. This is all buying or all selling in one contract. So the contract is aqdu bay'a. It's selling only, not selling and renting, and right? So it's selling, but selling more than one thing in one contract. It's okay. So it's exactly basically when you go to the store. You're not picking just one item and you go purchase it. This is a contract. This is the deal of transaction that you're doing, even though there's not contract that you sign. So you purchased 100 goods and you go to the cashier and you purchase them all in one deal. So very easy and simple. What if you want to return something? Say no. You purchase them all with one transaction. You can return one item and they have it in the receipt and they would recognize that, and without canceling the entire deal. Why? Because every item is known. What if it's masha'? What if it's you purchased, what's an example? We don't want to go to the examples. But what if you purchase from the store something as one transaction, but it has pieces to it, right? One piece is bad, a refrigerator, for example, but the door is broke, right? What do? You turn the whole thing. Can you say, well, the door is broke, but the rest is okay? So I want to, can they say, well, we'll give you only, only return the door, for example? So there's actually something to deal with it in this case, which also will be mentioned. Ulama, mashallah, they did not leave anything, in which you have the right, or that can be by the both parties to be pleased with it. They can give you the differences. Like, you don't want to return it. I like it, broke. But it's worth 100, but when it's broke, it's worth 80. So you can get your 20 back, right? So this flexibility is there, which is also something to be applied in many transactions. But we're not going far yet to this point. So you see this sentence? So read again with me. وَإِنْ بَاعَ مَشَاعًا بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ غَيْرِهِ أو عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن أو عبدا وحرا أو خلا وخمرا صفقة واحدة صح في نصيبه وعبده والخل بقسطه ولمشتر الخيار. Okay, so as you see how the words, even when you look at it, if he sells masha'an, so the key word is the masha', and then the different types of the masha', بينه وبين غيره, this is one, or عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن, and the like of that you can put it underneath, because عبده وعبد غيره, something that is permissible for him to sell, something that he owns versus something that he doesn't own, right? أو the third case, أو عبدا وحرا, a slave and a free man. So something that is not permissible for him to sell because it's not valid. A slave and a free man. Or the fourth case, خلا وخمر, vinegar and wine. So you have four cases. صفقة واحدة. All of these four, صفقة واحدة, one deal. Each one as a one deal. Then صح في نصيب. It's valid, it's correct, in his portion, which is the first case, وعبده, the second case, والخلي, and the abd in the second and the third case, and the khal in the fourth case. بقسطه by his portion. ولمشتر الخيار, and the purchaser, he has the خيار, the choice to cancel the whole deal. Clear? طيب, we'll go to the next statement, and then at the end inshallah if you have any questions. ولا يصح. Now يصح means what? Correct. صح, it's the past tense. That's why صح في نصيبي, because he said وإن باع, if he sold, and then he says صح, then it's valid in the past tense. Here ولا يصح in the present tense. That means it's something that is continuously to be true. It is not valid, it is not correct. بلا حاجة, without حاجة, without a need. And الحاجة, it's not necessarily the highest level of necessity, right? ولا يصح بلا حاجة, because there's ضرورة and حاجة. Sometimes they mention the حاجة in the level of the ضرورة and sometimes not. So we'll leave it as it is now. ولا يصح بلا حاجة. It is not correct, it is not valid. Without a need, بيع, meaning selling, ولا شراء, and no purchasing. So now he said بيع وشراء. Sometimes the word بيع include both. It depends on the context. But here he mentioned both, buying and selling. So ولا يصح, it's not correct, it's not valid. Without a need, without a valid need, buying or selling. ممن, from the one, تلزمه الجمعة بعد ندائها الثاني. ممن تلزمه, from the one that تلزمه is binding upon him, it's obligatory upon him. لازم, that means something has to be done. الجمعة, someone that جمعة is mandatory upon him. After ندائها الثاني, بعد ندائها الثاني, after the second نداء, after the second adhan. So what's the مسألة here? The second adhan of Jumu'ah, the adhan where the imam is on the minbar. The imam said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The muadhin is making the adhan, whether there is one adhan or if the masjid is making two adhan. So it's the second one if he's making two adhan. It's the first adhan, it's the only adhan if it's the only adhan. So if the imam is on the minbar and the adhan is being called, once the muadhin says Allahu Akbar, can someone purchase something? He says, ولا يصح. It's haram and ولا يصح. And we're not talking about differences of opinion. لا يصح. It's not valid. But then with a condition. بلا حاجة. Without a need. So that means it becomes correct when, if there's a need. But first of all, before we get to the needs, here buying and selling, is it for everybody? No. ممن تلزمه الجمعة. From the one that Jumu'ah is mandatory upon him. So therefore, if Jumu'ah is not mandatory upon him, it's okay to buy and sell. So a woman selling something to another woman, is it permissible after the Nida al-Thani? Yes, because woman, Jumu'ah is not mandatory upon her. Or a child is purchasing from a woman. But what if a woman, and some people they do this, again I'm going to some examples that we face, some people they do this back home. They don't close their shops. And they have a woman inside to sell. And they say it's Jumu'ah, it's not mandatory for her. But a man walks in. Is it permissible for her to sell that man? No. Because this man is mandatory for him to go for Jumu'ah. Right? So he's going to say only women shopping. So this is here, the one that Jumu'ah is mandatory upon him after the second adhan. So now we go back to bila haja. What's bila haja? It's not valid unless there's a need. What is the need? The need that a person, say for example, this is ulama they mention, someone is going for Jumu'ah, but he doesn't have anything to cover his awrah. Right? He lost his shirt or whatever. His awrah is exposed. He cannot go to the masjid with his knees showing. Or someone is wearing shorts, and he repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he did not repent to Allah. He wants to make Jumu'ah. Right? So he wants to buy something to cover his awrah. So this is a need. Otherwise he's gonna miss Jumu'ah. Or someone is starving, or he's not able to make it, or someone is sick, medicine that he needs to take it right now. So these types of situations, there's a valid need here, of course. So it has to be a need here. So ولا يصح بلا حاجة بيع ولا شراء. So either buying and selling, both are not valid. ممن, from the one تلزمه الجمعة. بعد ندائها الثاني. That's why he said بيع وشراء. Because if it's the word بيع only, a person would say, the one that sold it, she's a woman, but the one that purchased it, both of them, they have to be not mandatory for them to pray Jum'ah. Clear? وتصح, now وتصح means what? Valid. What's valid? سائر العقود. سائر, the rest of العقود, or the rest of transactions. Because that means other than buying and selling, it's permissible to do after, or not permissible, it's valid. The word تصح is different than being sinful. Something can be sinful, but it's valid. Understand? It's sinful, but you don't break the transaction. Transaction continues, but they committed a sin. Versus something لا يصح, that means the transaction itself is not valid. So there's no buying and selling happened. So here it says وتصح سائر العقود. After the adhan of Jumu'ah, if someone did another contract, renting an apartment, for example, or many uqud, loan, took a loan, halal loan, or any contract, maintenance contract, or whatever, signing contracts of a job, or whatever there is, right? So the contract is valid because it's not buying and selling. And some said, no, it's not permissible because it comes into the same reason why it's forbidden. And the others, they said, the ayah says clearly about بيع والشراء in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. We took it in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. يا الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فذروا البيع. Leave البيع, and البيع is mentioned specifically. Right? So we're not into the differences of opinions. Of course, in fiqh, you don't take from the fiqh what should be done or should not be done. This is the law. Right? So you don't just go by what's in the law. Right? It's not something, I can do this contracts after the second adhan. No, you don't. But it just is this contract in front of the judge. So people, they signed a contract of selling an apartment or a house, and it was at 1:45 p.m. And then the one that purchased it, he wants to cancel the contract because he doesn't like the house. But it's binding, already signed it. So they go to the judge. He says 1:45, the contract is not valid. Because it's Jumu'ah time. You understand what I'm saying? So this is law thing. It's not like, okay, go ahead and rent after Adhan al-Jumu'ah or something like this. So, and this is also, depend on where this is to be applied in whatever lands is. Most of the people, they would validate the contract, but they committed a sin. Okay? The contract is valid. You don't have a choice to break the contract, but you committed a sin because it's after the first adhan. So you have to be careful with that also when people are, if it's someone coming to the masjid for Jumu'ah and the khutbah, the adhan starts at 1:30, right? And the person stopped to purchase something or to put gas in the car. Right? He doesn't need to put gas in the car. He just, let me just put gas in the car. Is it permissible or not? If it's after the first adhan, it's not permissible. Unless he has to, otherwise he's not going to make it to the masjid. So he has no choice. Because people, again, this is something that we need to give khutbah on. That people think it's about Salatul Jumu'ah. As long as I make it for the Salah, I did not miss Jumu'ah. Yes, you did not miss Jumu'ah, but there's other rulings that applies here. You cannot buy and sell after the adhan, even if you're not in the masjid. Right? So if you're in your store and your store is open and the adhan of a Jumu'ah is called, and you still sell and buy and so on until it's closer to the Salah, you quit and then you go to the masjid, it's not permissible. Or you're sitting in the parking lot after the adhan, buying and selling online, right? And you're waiting for the Salah. All of that is not permissible after the adhan, whether you are in the masjid or not in the masjid. Okay. So here, this is the rest of the uqud, according to here, وَتَصِحُّ سَائِرْ الْعُقُود. The rest of the uqud is the plural of al-aqd. Let's finish this sentence and take the hadith, inshallah. وَلَا بَيْعُ عَصِيرٍ وَلَا بَيْعُ. That means what? وَلَا بَيْعُ. That means what? Going back to تصح أو لا تصح. Right? Because the sentence is معطوف here is going and. So وَلَا بَيْعُ, that means what? Is not valid. No, it's not صحيح. بَيْعُ عَصِيرٍ, to sell عصير. عصير is what? Juice. From al-asr. Al-asr is when you squeeze something. So that's the juice. أو عنب. عنب is grapes. عصير and عنب. عصير is juice, عنب is grapes. لمتخذه. Lam here to the one. Like لمشتر before. لمتخذه خمرا. The one that would take it as خمر. متخذه, that he would use it to be خمر, for wine or intoxication. So it is not permissible to sell to him عصير or عنب, or anything that people would use for intoxications. Even though selling grapes is halal, selling juice is halal. But you know that guy, the owner of a winery, he's coming to purchase this, you know for sure, he's coming to use it so that he can make wine from it. Then it's haram to sell him this. And it's not valid because it's haram. ولا بيع عصير, clear? أو عنب, and many things applies to this as we know. Anything that is haram. لمتخذه خمرا, for someone that would use it as خمر, and خمر is the intoxication's wine. And still, ولا سلاح أو ولا سلاح في فتنة. ولا سلاح, because it's ولا بيع عصير, ولا سلاح في فتنة. سلاح is what? Weapon. السلاح is weapon في فتنة, at times of fitna. Times there's fitna. Fitna here, what does fitna means here in this case? People are killing each other. There's a chaos in some part of the world, and people are killing each other in the streets like crazy. There's fitna happening. Then is it permissible for someone to sell weapon in this case? No. Because people are just killing indiscriminately, whatever. And the same thing, if someone would sell a weapon to a criminal, he knows that he's coming to purchase the weapon, even though he has the license to sell weapons and everything is legal. But that guy walks into the store screaming and angry, give me, now a gun, like this, the context of things, that he's going to take it to kill someone. It's haram to sell, which is a very common sense thing, right? So this is not permissible. ولا سلاح في فتنة in general. In fitna. ولا عبد مسلم لكافر. ولا بيع عصير. No, I'm sorry. ولا بيع عصير, صح, وعنب, ولا سلاح. سلاح, why? Because it's ولا بيع سلاح. بيع is not there, as if you say ولا بيع سلاح. So ولا سلاح في فتنة. ولا عبد مسلم لكافر لا يعتق عليه. And it's not permissible to sell a Muslim slave to a disbeliever. It's not permissible to sell a Muslim slave to a disbeliever. لا يعتق عليه. العتق is when he's free. Right? ولله عتقاء من النار. In Ramadan every night, freed from the hellfire. لا يعتق عليه. We'll talk about that maybe later. It's only permissible to sell a Muslim slave to a kafir if that, as a result of that transaction, the Muslim becomes free. How is that? If a Muslim slave, this is at the time of slavery, and if those who were not with us before, the ulama, they mentioned the example of slavery in buying and selling, not because it was present at their time. It's because it's a human being, so everybody can understand what is being meant, not something that does not exist anymore. So when that happened, if someone sell a slave to someone else, that happened to be that someone else is his father or his brother, he becomes free automatically. You get it? So if his father is a kafir and he comes and he wants to purchase that Muslim slave, which is his son, knows he doesn't know, doesn't matter. Oh, if I sell that slave to that man, that slave becomes free. So sell him the slave. He becomes free. Or a brother, meaning from the first level of relationship. But this is the ruling, or his son or something like this. And you would find always in the subject of slavery all the different rules that would lead to free of slaves. So it makes it the easy way of freeing slaves, whether it's in kafarat, in expiations, or in something like this, or a slave wants to free himself, then he is to be given zakah to free himself. He has the choice. And this is where that exists in the times of when there was slavery. If there was a slave that he comes to his master, he says, I want to free myself. How much you would take? 1,000? Then the zakah can be given to that person to free himself. And the owner has no rights to say no. So anyway, so this is that. And then there's one sentence left. I'm not sure if we took it before. So let's just take the language of it. وحرم ولم يصح. حرم means haram. ولم يصح. And it's not valid. بيعه على بيع أخيه وشراؤه على شرائه وسومه على سوم. حرم ولم يصح. It's haram and it's not valid. بيعه على بيع أخيه. That means his selling on the selling of his brother. So when someone would sell something to someone else that he already purchased, to let him return it. So you see your brother is purchasing a car, he purchased the car and he has the time to return it. So he says, return it and I'll give you the same exact car cheaper. That's not permissible. You know, it's, or, two stores competing for one, وَشِرَاءُ عَلَى شَرَاءٍ. And the same thing for purchasing. So selling is not permissible, and purchasing على شراء. You purchase something, someone would say, or the purchaser would say, I'll purchase it from you cheaper instead of the other one. وَسَوْمُ عَلَى سَوْمِ. السَّوْم is musawama, is bargaining. And which one is not valid and which one is valid with a sin, some invalidates everything except the bargaining, but it's still haram or it's not permissible. But we can talk about it more inshallah ta'ala because of the time. So here, no.
So everything in the paragraph, everything in that paragraph is invalid.
Yes.
According to this.
No. Can we read from the beginning to where we stopped here, inshallah? I'll read after me, inshallah. وإن باع مشاعا بينه وبين غيره أو عبده وعبد غيره بغير إذن أو عبدا وحرا أو خلا وخمرا صفقة واحدة صح في نصيبه وعبده والخل بقسطه ولمشتر الخيار ولا يصح بلا حاجة بيع ولا شراء ممن تلزمه الجمعة بعد ندائها الثاني وتصح سائر العقود ولا بيع عصير أو عنب لمتخذه خمرا ولا سلاح في فتنة ولا عبد مسلم لكافر لا يعتق عليه وحرم ولم يصح بيعه على بيع أخيه وشراؤه على شرائه وسومه على سومه. No. Because of the time, let's take the hadith first, inshallah ta'ala. If you have any questions, I'm not sure we have. I should have stopped earlier. So, does anybody knows the Bulugh al-Maram? What's the last hadith we took? We should have also seen that before. Bulugh al-Maram, we're talking about well, the first one is 40 hadith. No, Bulugh al-Maram first. Bulugh al-Maram. So which last hadith that we took? 80 something maybe? 84 was the last hadith. Okay. Took 84. Okay. We didn't take 85. Okay. So hadith number 85. Hadith number 85. And a word in it is what we just mentioned here. So there's a word that is repeated here, inshallah. So hadith number 85. Everybody's there? You ready, inshallah? عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم التسبيح للرجال والتصفيق للنساء متفق عليه. زاد مسلم في الصلاة in صلاة. So the hadith is التسبيح للرجال. التسبيح is to say subhanallah. That's what التسبيح means, to say subhanallah. والتصفيق, so التسبيح للرجال, to say subhanallah is for men. والتصفيق للنساء. التصفيق is when the two hands they clap. This is for women in the salah. So in the salah, if the imam forgets something, so the men would say subhanallah to remind the imam of the mistake that he made. For women, if the imam is making a mistake, even if it's his wife, it doesn't matter. Right? Even if it's his wife, his daughter, then what do? They hit their hands like this. Not clapping the hands like he's doing a good job. No, it's like this. That's what the tasfiq means, when they're standing in the salah. So this is when we talked about a safqa, when the two hands are making the noise of clapping two hands. So this is a tasfiqu للنساء في الصلاة. This is in the salah. So it's easy, inshallah. We have, can we say the adhan and then if you have any questions, who's going to give the adhan? Is it time for the adhan? 2 minutes? Oh, subhanallah. The attendance code? The attendance code is no business after second adhan. No business after second, 2 and D adhan. You can add what's easy for you, and misspellings are okay. One word would be okay, inshallah. Could you please explain this condition? How slave would be free where it says selling Muslim to kafir? But if any slave is sold to his father or to his son, the transaction is valid, but then he becomes free immediately after the transaction is done. Because no father will have his son as a slave, or no son would have his father as a slave. So this is the way that the Sharia would allow the more freedom of the slaves, even though, because it's not valid to have someone, it's not valid to have your son as a slave to you, or the father as a slave to his son. But they would allow the transaction. Why? So that the person becomes free. Right? So does not selling after the adhan also apply to non-Muslim men? This is another point where whose تلزمه الجمعة are the non-Muslims, that Jumu'ah is mandatory for them. The answer is yes, but they need to be Muslim first. So this is whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim. A man, yes. Selling against a brother is haram, but if it happens, can the customer go with the second guy, or would that be haram too? This is where, does the transaction valid with a sin, or it's not valid with a sin? This is here the mas'ala here. So according to this, is not valid. And for the second one to disapprove of it. But many would give the verdict that it's valid with a sin. It's valid with a sin. If and that's why a person should stay away from it. But it's Allah musta'an. He should go with the first one. He should go with the first one. If he's selling something, or he's purchasing something, that first one. Not to go to the second one till he finish with the first one. لمتخذي خمرا. المتخذ أخذ is when someone takes something. And وكذلك أخذ ربك إذا أخذ القرى. And this is how your Lord أخذ means seize and punishment. It also comes into that meaning. So لمتخذي خمرا, the one that would take it or use it as khamr. One that would take the grapes to use it for wine. Yes. Yes, if the Imam says the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can say Ameen. If the Imam is saying dua, you can say Ameen. If someone has to say something because of a necessity, it's to the Imam, not to anyone else. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك